Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the QRL Show, the place where you come for the crypto and stay for the quantum. On today's episode, my co-host Michael Strike and I are excited to be joined by Gabi Urrutia. He is the Senior Vice President of Security and Field CISO at Halborn. And Halborn, for those in our audience that aren't aware, they're the industry-leading security firm for enterprise-grade digital assets, trusted by top financial institutions globally and leading blockchain projects. They have everything from leading class teams on the security side, do smart contract auditing, pen testing, advising, and a whole lot more that Gabi will help fill us in on. They've worked with a lot of globally recognized names, just to name a few: Coinbase, Solana, Grayscale, Circle. They're currently in the midst of working with us, QRL, as a security partner in doing one of our audits for the quantum resistant ledger. This past month, April 2026, they released their results of an independent security audit of our post quantum cryptography library. And that audit found no cryptographic vulnerabilities, and the findings were all informational. We'll have the link to that in the show notes below. And the full audit and security review is currently still in progress. And so today we're really just excited to have Gabi on with Michael and I from the QRL core team to have a great conversation around understanding what makes a great security audit, maybe discuss on some of these crypto hacks and what may or may not be avoided based on some of the production code and things that auditing firms are seeing or lack thereof, and just kind of where Hellborn sits in the space. And I'm just excited to have a good conversation, and I'm going to hand it over to Gabi in a second. But it's great to have you guys both with me.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Welcome, Gabi, to the QRL show. It's great to have
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
Gabby, maybe we could start out with an intro. This will be kind of a two-parter question. First off, introduce yourself, who you are, and I know I gave a high-level description of Hellborn, but maybe the audience that is maybe familiar with Hellborn by name but doesn't understand the whole scope of what you guys do. Let us know as the second question to that how you describe Hellborn's role, in the blockchain and financial services, industry.
awesome. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to
Yeah.
this amazing chat. I'm Gabi, and as you mentioned, I'm the senior VP of security and field CISO at Halborn. Actually, I was the first employee in the company after the co-founders. So I've been in the company for the last almost 6 years, and honestly, my role changed according to the space was changing, because firstly I was the first offensive security engineer at the company doing audits and so on, and nowadays I'm more worried about compliance, institutional security, custody, exactly the same what the space is going on. So we are a security firm. So specifically for this industry, I don't like to define as a crypto security or something like that. We are cybersecurity, but for Web3 specifically and DLT. So Halborn is not only here to find bugs in crypto projects. So this is a big part of our work, is enabling the digital transformation in the financial system. That being said, helping banks, custodian, and institutions move onto this technology safely. So that's the bridge we sit on, between traditional finance and the on-chain work. And for sure, smart contract audits is a big part, but that's just one layer. So we access to layer one protocols and the cryptography under them. We secure digital asset custody, key management, infra. It's honestly the part where a bank actually holds the asset, as well as we do CISO level advisory, regulatory readiness for frameworks like, in Europe it's a nightmare, Mika, Dora, and all this stuff. And we are increasingly securing AI system teams, which is a very very hot topic too. So yeah, I mean, we try to protect the whole ecosystem.
No, that's great, and it's I'm sure, as you mentioned, in the last 6 years, you've seen a lot from those early days, and then both as you've grown the team at Halborn and with the landscape continuing to change, there's probably just been a lot of a lot happening in between now and then, and in the coming years as well. I'd love to maybe start out as a first question. Maybe some of our viewers are looking at it from the lens of they're forward facing and thinking in terms of, hey, uh, security. Some of our audience, obviously, on the post quantum security is really important. Maybe let's talk a little bit as in general. A lot of people hear the word audit, and some people might think of it as a, hey, pen testing, deep, this or that. Other people might see it as, oh, it's a checkbox. From your perspective, what separates kind of like a high caliber audit from a very surface level of hey, we got audited? Because there's a very big difference between someone saying, we got audited versus like a high caliber team such as Halborn that is really digging into all the stuff. How would you describe that to people to kind of have that distinction between the two? And maybe we'll have a follow up on really why audits matter.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a checkbox audit answers just one question. It's like,
Yeah.
did anyone look at this? It's like, and a serious audit answers a much harder one. What is this system actually trusting, and what happened when when that trust is wrong? So, and nowadays, this checkbox audit, by coding, scanners, and so on, it's pretty easy to run a scanner to detect bugs and so on. But, the human is still needed because someone has to triage those findings, checking if they are false positives or not. So if you are very committed with the security, a high caliber audit becomes more and more important because a surface review reads the code and flags like the obvious patterns. And nowadays AI can do that. But a real review builds a threat model first. So always we go to the basics in security, and you can check who can send input here, or what do they control, what are the trust boundaries, or what's the worst thing reachable from the outside. So then you test against, let's say, that, not against a generic checklist. So this is the important thing. So AI is great, as you know. It's the very very hot topic nowadays. AI is great to discover this checkbox, but creativity still remains in humans. And
Yep.
and I think this is great. I mean, this is great. The partnership human machine is gonna be the most powerful thing, but the human is still needed to find the I said in a podcast later, before that, like, the coolest vulnerabilities. And the speaker told me, like, why the coolest not for the client is hack, no, but my
Yeah.
way is like, because audits, they are 90% methodology and 10% creativity.
Yeah.
And this part of methodology can be covered by AI nowadays,
Yeah.
but the creativity still remains in humans.
Yeah. I was no. This is funny. It's a completely unrelated, but it's. I was talking to someone last week about. Remember when you guys were both younger? I don't know how it was in your region, but you used to have to go to the library to when you had to like find a book, and you used to have to use like a manual system of look up like, hey, it's in aisle A5, and that was back in the day when there was like barely even like a computer system on it. And then it's like then computers a filing system, and now it's like, okay, just look up the books over there. I think that with AI, as you mentioned, it enhances and helps with a lot of the mundane grunt work, and then it's starting to get smarter and smarter, especially since late 2025, and it's going to continue to evolve. But you still need that human element to be able to go, especially the workflows and like audits and looking into the nuances of a code base. You're seeing, okay, hey, this here could be a vulnerability or a hole where something could be wrong, and it's never been seen before. So like AI is based, a lot of it's based on pre-training data, and so it's like when you're going through an audit, there's a lot of real nuance. But I'm oversimplifying here for like a non-technical viewer. But Strike, do you want to maybe, Gabby, do you want to add to that before I jump to the next question?
Yeah, yeah. So, for example, people are claiming now AI is, is making the things worse in terms of, oh, attackers, they have access to AI, and they can discover new 0 days, new bugs never were discovered. But the reality is, from my point of view, forces are more balanced, ever, because
Yeah, on both
now
sides.
the part of the good ones, as we do cybersecurity companies, we have the same tools as the attackers. And
Yeah,
now the things, because before it was, defenders, we have to be focused just in one thing, and attackers, they, or in several things, sorry. So it's like you have to defend, maybe in our case, maybe 100 protocols at the same time, and the
yeah,
attackers, they say, okay, I will be focused just in one protocol, and I will try to hijack it every day. With
yeah,
AI, you can distribute the work, and you can try to defend your clients like in a more balanced way. So,
yeah,
in this case of hijacking code and draining contracts and so on, so this is a thing we can, we could see like 4 years ago, these reentrancy attacks and so on.
yeah,
But nowadays the approach is totally different. The
yeah,
approach
and a
now
lot of
is,
it. Yeah,
yeah, it's now compromising off-chain part by supply chain, social engineering, and so on. Then in the middle, maybe as Bybit, like human approval, probably.
yeah.
And finally, the attack is executed on-chain, but not because on-chain contracts work bad. It is not the
Yeah, it's
case.
because they use the social engineering aspect to infiltrate, and that was their
Exactly.
Trojan horse to get in the door. And then, and since the AI tools are getting better, they're able to do that social engineering more at scale. And I know we talked about this, Michael, and you and I in our pre-recording, but I'm sure we might get to a nice question or two on that in a couple minutes. Michael, I think for Gabby, I think maybe a question I have, and then Michael, I'll let you jump in. I know we have a good list here of them. When Halborn audits like a project, I know we'll say specific to say blockchain. What are some of the main categories? And I want to keep this like applicable so though both the technical and the audience that is maybe doesn't fully, they're maybe not super in the weeds on the technical side. What are some of the main categories and of risks you're trying to look at uncovering? So like some people might just think, okay, hey, code bugs or secure. What are some of the categories that stuff falls under? Like, is it integrations, the dependencies on stuff? What's the best way to kind of
Yeah.
look at
So,
that for? Yeah,
I think what you're asking is kind of what's within the scope of an audit that people might a third party audit that people may not consider to be part of a code audit.
Yeah, so first of all, if you review the contract itself, or the project itself, so the
hmm
first thing we are going to go is to the logic, and any kind of arithmetic correctness is just like, okay, does the math do what the spec says, including at the weird edges? And then, for example, the input handling is like, what happened when someone feeds the system malformed, truncated, and hostile data. And nowadays, this is a very typical attack in AI also, which is the injecting the prompt injection, modifying the prompts. Another category is the secret life cycle. And that being said, how keys and nonce are created and used and clean up, which is a very, very, very common attack vector. And for sure, the integration assumptions, what the code silently expect the caller to do rightly. And for sure, build and supply chain is like that the thing you install from npm. I mean, we saw many attacks in npm libraries lately actually match the source that was reviewed. And another category could be side channels. Does timing or memory behavior leak something it shouldn't? So it's it's quite interesting how this kind of categories has been has amplified the scope, because
Yeah.
now it's also important. Before it was you were audited, yeah, okay, you are good, but nowadays
Yeah.
it's
Hey,
like
thumbs up. Move on.
yeah,
Keep
exactly.
calm and carry on. Yeah. But now it's
And
different.
now it's like how are you managing the due diligence with third parties? And now, as you mentioned, 4 or 5 years ago the space was more, I mean, was funnier than now, we can say that. But nowadays, fortunately for everyone, the space is much more boring, because we are looking at the all the things around. And before, I mean, before, no one took a look at the website, took a look at the libraries, took a look at the due diligence with third parties, and took a look. It's just okay, you are audited your smart contracts, you are good. But
Yeah.
nowadays it's much more than that. I mean, it's okay, smart contract security, it's something you have to perform. But before that, you have a lot of policies, procedures in your company you have to implement in order to create this defense in the system.
Mhm. No, yeah, you mentioned bring up you mentioned a few of the my next question was going to be on some of the where do some of the most dangerous vulnerabilities lie for, is it in some of the obvious stuff within, smart contracts? Is it stuff within like key handling and stuff? Is there any other? I think maybe I'll jump to this one instead, because I think this one ties into our top section, and which is, on why high caliber audits matter. Maybe we'll go to this one, which I have is, in blockchain, the cost of a security failure at any point is just massive. And with projects, whether we're looking at the market cap of a project, or if we're just looking at the size of any project in general, we can be talking tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, a billion plus, and the size there. So we're talking a lot is at stake. In your team's opinion, what are some of the most common patterns that you see behind? I know we mentioned the social engineering aspect of being, a big attack vector with a lot of recent hacks we're seeing. Is there any other major ones that are actually that you've seen that are major crypto vulnerabilities or exploits that are actually tied to, the code itself, and maybe aren't social engineering, or that you see and you're like, wow, with a good audit, I think that one could have been avoidable. And maybe this is, you're just speaking in general with not projects that Halborns work with, but ones that would have liked to probably work with Halborn. Um,
Yeah, so for example, I mean, uh, most catastrophic losses aren't, we can say, exotic.
yeah,
They are known categories
yeah,
that weren't taken seriously enough. So,
hmm
for example, if we go through governance, for example, governance is process. So, when you ask, so are you managing your multi-signature wallets properly? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like we have two signers, two of three, and so on. Okay, or maybe five of nine. Okay,
Yeah.
And when you try to dig into, you discover for those five signers, three of them are brothers, and the other one, so
They're all in the same household.
it's like
It's the
it's not
same
a
person.
real it's not a real governance. It's not a real multi-signature. So this is a funny example, but real. So I'm not going to give names, but
Yep.
it's a real example. But if I had to compress like years of incidents into few patterns, we can say let's say first, trust plays where it shouldn't be. So it's like code that assumes input is well formed or assumes another company already check it, and this is very common. And the second one is the thing I mentioned before, privileged access with no containment. So an admin key or upgradable mechanism that, if compromised, hands an attacker to the entire system. And I have a very, very nice example. So we discover a vulnerability in the connection between the AWS, or let's say cloud in general, system when they store the code, and their connection with GitHub, because GitHub is a privileged user in AWS. So when we discovered that vulnerability, we were able to push code to GitHub by GitHub Actions like an admin. So we were able to upgrade the contracts. So if we were able to do that in a controlled environment, so imagine an attacker modifying the contracts and upgrading the contracts without control. So another example is the gap between audited and deployed, and this is very common. I mean, the version that was reviewed and the version actually running, so diverge through an upgrade, configuration change, or dependency bump, and this is a disaster.
Yeah.
So another common pattern, we can say, composability surprise. So the contract is fine alone, but plugged into another protocol, it behaves in ways nobody modeled before. So it's for that it's important to remark these third party connections and so on. So try to audit and try to do the simulation of your system as realistic as possible, because this could discover vulnerabilities, not only in the system itself but also in the connection with the system.
So
Awesome. Thank you.
I I have a question. One of the things of audits is it takes additional time and it increases uh, the roadmap and time to delivery, right? To have an independent party go through and take a look at everything. How important is it for blockchain projects, especially in the quantum or nascent technology space, to have an independent firm look at it? Because not many, definitely not many projects take the time to go through and have an external review of their code. How important is it really?
So, security is a process. So, first of all, your security team internally should review first your contracts and should try to check the functionalities, the checkbox we talked about before. Like, okay, uh, mint means burns, all the functions are working as we expected. But the thing is, you alone yourself, you cannot audit your blind points in your system. So the team which wrote the code probably is the worst the worst positioned to see their own mistakes. And it's not a lack of talent, because you are reviewing the code with the same assumptions you built it. So you are
Yeah, you
reading.
don't it's not it's a different you don't have that other perspective yet. It's kinda like when you write a draft and you come back to it a little bit later. It's like you see, "Oh, I spelled this word wrong," but you kinda need that added perspective,
Exactly. So you
yeah.
are reading what you wanted to write. And actually, it's a technique we use internally when we review a very huge update of a client. We try to give the project to another different engineer in order to see the project with fresh eyes and try to discover new things for not getting used to the code. So in this way you can be able to discover patterns you didn't see before, because a good auditor has the experience. They've seen a lot of projects fail in the same way. So in this kind of library of failures, it's impossible to replicate from the center of just one project. So and I honestly, I think this independent audit is much more important than ever. It's not something optional, not only for the security itself, but also if you want to be regulated under any kind of framework, Mika,
Yep.
Dora, or others. Even if you don't send the audit, you have to pass through the good practice requirement.
Yeah, you're taking the steps that are needed to, make sure as best as possible. There's a number of uh, check boxes that actually have a lot under the surface to them. So that's an important one.
Exactly.
Michael, do you have a follow up one to that?
Not specifically. I guess the well, I suppose one thing I would is one thing I would ask is how much credibility does it add to institution credibility and confidence does an independent audit add to if institutions or large organizations are considering using a project, how much credibility does that add? Does it front end inst- does it give a much more confidence? Does it front end a lot more of credibility knowing that it's been independently audited? Or what's your take on that?
So honestly, independent is not enough. At some point this should be independent and very, rigorous, because if you are a company, you are assigning logos and you pass a scanner. Okay, this is independent, but don't protect you, from anything. So I think the quality is as important as the independence.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you talk about credibility, so for institution is a lot, but it's very limited, because it's the honesty under what is the limit, which is just credibility gives you from a risk perspective. So for institutions, we can say the independent audit is not closing the decision but enabling the decision. It's the condition to enter. It's not a differentiator, but it's a condition. So no serious institution, they put uh, they put money on a non-audited infra. If you go to reg list, most or the majority of the protocols hack, they were not audited. So this is something we cannot discuss. But
Yeah.
saying is true, saying, "Oh, we are audited," it's not this doesn't open the door to a bank, but is the ticket, as I mentioned, to enter to the due diligence, not for passing through the due diligence. But the credibility is, uh, it's like, okay, we evaluated that it's not 100% secure,
Yeah.
but this kind of, the weight of that is I think, in my opinion, is based on some conditions. The first one is who is signing, because at the beginning, Ryan mentioned some of the firms we audited. So reputation in terms of auditing, I mean, it's quite important. And the second could be the scope, and then which kind of audit did you follow? If it was a continuous audit, or it was just a screenshot, and that's all. So, it's a very important topic you mentioned, but I think the main takeaway to close this is like, the audit uh, is don't transfer the responsibility, because the risk is in the entity, but you are giving, the ticket to enter in this due diligence, and something audited. It's something is banks and institution they take into account.
Have you
Yeah.
found that third party independent auditing is a requirement for some institutions in order for a project to even be considered investing in or using?
Yes, definitely is part of the due diligence. You audited your system, because, as I mentioned, is the ticket. It one of the first questions in the first call, like, have you ever been audited? So participating with firms, and not only that, it's not have you audited. Okay, it's like, okay, and give me a list of the auditors you had, references, the governance policies you have, all the procedures. And nowadays, as I mentioned before, it's much more than just an audit, but it's a mandatory thing.
Now that now that makes
Interesting.
sense. I think, y- yeah, the one part I think that would be, um, you kind of touched on a little. We touched on these a little bit. I'd be curious to know, obviously, for people that are, whether we're talking, the top institutions, large banks to the biggest, blockchain crypto projects. Obviously, every project, whether they're in it's in its infancy or it's further along, they should be doing everything they can do, not just one thing, to ensure the security of, and the long term longevity of their project for the betterment of the project itself and for those that are reliant and put confidence in it. One part that I'd be curious to know is, for anyone that is, whether someone's a sophisticated user on the retail side or someone at an institution that maybe hasn't had an audit yet of their project, how do you suggest, like, reading an audit report? Because, like, for example, we have, we currently, the audit for QRL is currently in progress. When someone reads that, they see there's no big vulnerabilities. There's just 13 parts that were, low level informational. But in general, to audits, how should we how should people read audit reports in general? Like, what should we be looking for if I'm a regular everyday, user in the blockchain space, or maybe I in fintech? How should I be looking at an audit report? Should I be looking out for stuff, red flags? Or I know there's probably a couple answers to this depending on the use case, but help fill us in a little on what people should keep an eye out for within audit reports. Because people want to, if they're reading an audit report for a project, they want to really understand and have confidence. And we don't want to get people to have false confidence. So, what do you recommend as someone that's extremely in the space? What do you see people or recommend people look for within audit reports?
Yeah. So this is very interesting, because nowadays we don't have any kind of a standard
Hmm.
to follow the
Yep.
the Web3 audit. So actually, I'm part of the ISO 307, which is blockchain and DLT and DLT security, DLT technologies, and I'm leading one part for smart contract security in order to define the standards because there is no ISO or others. But if you go to a report, I think the first thing I recommend to check is the scope. It's like what was checked
Yep.
specifically, and in which version. It's important the commit hash or whatever you have to check. But if the report doesn't have the scope in a clear way, so it's not an audit. It's an opinion. It's like okay, this is
Yeah,
good.
it's yeah, if the scope only includes 5% of the project, it doesn't speak on behalf of the whole project at all. I'm just giving a quick example, but it's
Exactly.
the scope really matters for what it means. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes this happen. Like, okay, this project was hijacked, and people automatically, when they check in the website, oh, this project was audited by Halborn, for example, they say, oh, a Halborn project was hijacked, and it's like we just
Yeah,
audited one contract, and the project
yeah.
was hijacked with the others, or one
Yeah,
we
they
didn't
go to
check.
the assumption of, "Oh, they must have missed something," when in reality, it's that was just a small portion of many things. So that nuance matters. But no, continue, Gabby.
Exactly, exactly. So which is important is what is in scope and what is out of scope, as well as any kind of assumptions. So because it's important, because if you connect your system with another audit or someone audited the project you are going to connect in the report, a serious report puts specifically, okay, this library assumes this randomness, for example, is secure, or we assume you are protecting, for example, when they say, oh, you have here a very privileged function, and okay, I mean, this is a risk of centralization. If the client, if they said, oh, but we have a multi-signature wallet, okay, I didn't see it, but I will put as an assumption, like I assume the color protects the private key. So and this, and honestly, there is where the risk lives, and a very good report put this on the table instead of hiding this. So it's, for example, the assumption section is quite important for me, and the
Yeah,
another part is the methodology. It's like how did they try to break it? It's like if you have, for example, oh, we have no criticals, no high, no medium vulnerability. So this doesn't mean they just run a scanner. So I want to see the effort. I mean, did you see manually, line by line, which kind of testing did you perform? So this is quite important. And then for sure the findings. I mean, and here you have to check all the categories. For example, it's important to know an informational finding is not noise. I mean, you have to read what it is. A finding of timing variability or whatever is related to permissions, you can see as informational, and it's exactly the kind of thing, if you don't manage properly, because maybe this informational finding is related to any kind of governance policy or whatever, so it's something can be convert into a serious thing in production. So I think the question regarding the findings is not how many criticals. I mean, it's like what it is, and why are you what are you building on top of that in the following months.
yeah,
And after that is the status of the remediation. I mean, if the finding was fixed or was acknowledged, so it's not the same solve with a commit than acknowledge, risk asset tip or something like that. So a finding which the team didn't decide to fix it, can tell you, as much as the project is taking the security seriously. And finally, check the date, and if the report reflects the recommendation of a re-audit. I have a non-written rule. If I discover in a project more than 5 criticals, or I have more than 25 or 30 findings, I recommend a re-audit, because maybe you are missing something. Imagine if you have a critical vulnerability which trigger a denial of service. So that being said, whenever you exploit, the system is down. So maybe this vulnerability hiding is hiding another one.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
it's like it's underneath a layer of like it's iceberg of you have some iceberg, but hey, if there's a couple major ones there, what how much more is underneath the surface? Is there anything more to add to that? I have one more
I actually have
question,
a
and then I'll
question on that.
yeah, no, Michael, please, yeah, jump in.
Yeah, you're talking about the different classifications: low, medium, high, critical vulnerabilities. In the audit result that we received, it said, I believe I'm reading this right. The final report found no cryptographic vulnerabilities, with all findings rated informational. Uh, how is that a common result, or do you typically for a blockchain project, or do you typically find some? Do, what's a common result for a vulnerability report? Is it common to not find any cryptographic vulnerabilities, particularly with something nascent like quantum tech, or um,
So we
what's a common result?
Yeah, so we have like a timeline in the in the history. At the beginning, we discovered a lot of criticals because of the maturity of the space, and then because of the developers, they started to be better and better. We started to see projects to have less and less vulnerabilities, and then much more low and informational. But recently, due to the vibe coding, we are discovering more and more criticals, because AI, I mean, recently companies to secure skills of cloud
Yeah.
or something like that are becoming more and more famous because of that. So projects are starting to be less and less secure because the vibe coding. But in my opinion, for the quantum technologies and post quantum and cryptography, I think developers, they are not using AI yet, but probably they will start to use it, and we will start to see more and more vulnerabilities. But cryptography is like a very specific thing for subject matter experts. So it's something, uh, it's been implementing properly. So discover vulnerability is becoming harder and harder. So it's the typical result, because this is implemented by cryptographers, and they are very good on that. It's not a vibe coding thing.
Yeah, it's a very
So
different the quality of the team under the project building it. That
exactly.
mattered. Like, yeah, there's a big difference. If vibe coders on one end of the corner or end of the street, you got a very high level experienced team on the other side, and then you got a lot in between. So
Yeah, but maybe in the next race of crazy things in crypto, people will start to implement quantum or post-quantum things, and they will start to implement things using AI, and vulnerabilities uh, will increase again in the
oh yeah.
report. But it's quite difficult to discover vulnerabilities in things they've been in the world for the last, uh, you know. Uh, Maybe 40 years or 50 years.
Yeah, I have a good question that kind of piggybacks on this one a little bit, and this one is specific to how we just talked on. Michael asked a question on the hey, how common is it? Is it it's obviously assumedly a good thing if if a project, like you mentioned, if a project's got 5 or 10 or 20 something critical, you're like, hey, you might need a full new audit. Whereas if you're not unpack, or if everything's looking good, it's like, okay, hey, the quality of the developers and the team, they did something right here because our team is experienced and we're not finding anything. A question I have for you is, and this is one that the audience might really like as well, is we live in the world of crypto and blockchain. So like it's interesting in that we have the mix of people, proper fintech in suits. I'm just kind of portraying a picture, all the way to like, a pseudo or anonymous person that's maybe not even, huge hundreds of $1 million market cap projects where maybe the founder or founders aren't even known. So I'd be curious to know from your perspective, there's so many flavors of projects within the crypto and blockchain space. When you, as Halborn security partner, work with varying projects over the past 6 years, how important is the way that a project and the core team, how important is it in the way that that team works with you, and their responsiveness, the documentation, their willingness to resolve problems in the overall security process? Do you find that, I'm assuming that's obviously very important, because if I'm sure you've worked with a few projects in the past where maybe they threw money at Halborn, but maybe it's like, hey, something's a little off here. But how important is the responsiveness of teams? I know there's two or three questions within one, but I'd love to unpack this one.
And how was your experience working with our team? I'd like to know.
Okay, first of all, the experience with your team was really great. I mean, we are very glad to work with you. But answering your question is like, you definitely spot on, because when a security incident happens, it's not because just one thing. So when we start a project, we have an internal metric divided by three aspects. The first one is the documentation coverage. As you said, if I'm not able to know how the project is expected to work, I cannot audit properly. I can spend 2 or 3 days understanding everything by myself and making assumptions. So that's quite important. The second part is the code quality. I mean, when you see, I mean, for developers, this is a common sentence, the spaghetti code, which is plenty of for loops and so on, the classic spaghetti code, not optimized at all. So when you see the code and is not very mature, so it's much more difficult to review. And finally is the test. I mean, security is security starts at the beginning when you start to write the code. So writing tests, it's one of the most important part from the developers side. If you give me a code with the proper testing, I mean, it's fantastic for the auditors, because they can check not only in documentation how the code is expected to work, but also they can see it in the code itself. So maybe you discover a functionality which doesn't work properly, and you think it's a vulnerability, and maybe it's a logic which is working bad. But not only that, imagine you are checking the test and they say, okay, this here the system expects, I don't know, this is an example, a silly example, like 4 zeros, and the auditor checks like, oh, what if I put 5? Why not? So this can give you more attack ideas, because as the system expects to work in a way, and the user is going to use the system in that way. So one of the part of the auditor is acting as a user, but with malicious intentions. And if you have the test on how the system is expected to work, it's much more better, for sure.
Yeah. No,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I have Michael. I think I have just one more, and then you can before we as we start wrapping up, if you have one after that. One I want to
Yeah,
ask
go
is,
ahead.
and I know that the interesting thing about with high quality firms such as Halborn that are going through the hard work of digging deep and coming to try to find every nook and cranny to try to ensure that you're covering the tracks so that problems or exploits or anything doesn't happen down the road. So a lot of that work and the quality of the work is actually stuff doesn't happen later because of that good work. Could you give, and you could keep it broad or not use name names, but is there any situations of maybe a project where either maybe even it's a horror story of a project that was going to work with Halborn, but then something happened and they were like, we don't need an audit, or maybe it's something where a project came to you um, uh, a year or two later and was like, guys, thank you so much. Like there that could have been such a huge thing. So Hellborn finding and identifying it with us as a security partner helped us ensure that that never happened. And as I said in the beginning, you'd never know what might have happened if they didn't do an audit. But if you can take this one wherever you'd like. I think this is a good closeout one in terms of the importance of high caliber audits.
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen a lot of projects in the last 6 years. So, and the example you put is, I think match perfectly with the thing we were talking about. So, one of the things I honestly uh, try to tell to my engineers is the assumptions things. So a client says, okay, I'm going to connect my project with this contract, but the contract was audited several times. I don't have any problem. I said, okay, I mean, if you think uh, if you think it's not it's not a problem, okay. So we audited the project. The project uh, was audited properly, no vulnerabilities around, but finally, they had some problems with the connectors and with the third parties they were working on.
Yeah.
And another thing is I mean, we let's say as cybersecurity expert, we are very one of the skills we have is the curiosity. So I can put some examples because doing some projects, we discover vulnerabilities which can affect to the whole space. And I think one of the best example is the demonic vulnerability. We discovered this 0 day vulnerability called demonic in a client project, and basically you were able to see in your machine the mnemonic phrase in clear text, the
Wow.
mnemonic phrase on your wallet in your memory. And we discovered this vulnerability in a project randomly, and finally, we discovered this vulnerability was in MetaMask, in Phantom Wallet,
Jeez.
in Brave,
Yeah.
in XDeFi, in a lot of wallets because it was a problem of a library in JavaScript.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I think people, if they look at a web, it's like, hey, if there's one thing, it's like and then a lot of times, like you said, it could be something that, hey, that gets thought of. Oh, well, that's it over there, and it's like that could be the big thing. But Michael, I know you're saying something at the same time, so
No, it was just
appreciate it.
just agreeing. I've seen seen the scenarios that Gabby is describing. I do have one. I do have one other question. In having reviewed and closely looking at the code for the project, was there anything novel or positive or that stood out that kind of set QRL's code apart from other projects in a noteworthy way, or what was your interpretation or of the code, or was there anything unique that you noticed that was done that was impressive, or what was your take?
so honestly, I mean the Curl projects. I mean, it was very. it was very interesting to audit it because, I mean, auditing a post quantum cryptography library, it's something amazing for the engineers as well as the other libraries, but covering these two layers that matter most, which is the signature scheme itself and the layer that actually derives, stores, and uses the keys on users' behalf. So I mean, it was a really great experience, a very interesting. It was a challenge for the engineers because we try to find ways to use that to try at the end of the day we try to be the bad guys in a control environment.
No, which
So
is
and
cool.
we
Yeah.
try, if the wallet layer mishandles a key, or if the wallet accepts any kind of malform address. So and for sure in the cryptography side, I remember we reviewed the crypto code base, and it was really great to review a pure JavaScript implementation of this post quantum signature scheme. So it was a really challenge for my team. So this is the thing I can
Yeah.
say.
A good challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's like when you have a project and you discover 10 criticals and 20 high vulnerability or something. This is boring for a cybersecurity expert. It's like when you are try to break in the project, you are trying to break the project for 2 weeks and you didn't discover anything. You go to bed and you are still thinking about how you can break
Yeah,
it.
you're
So
pinging each other in Slack like, "Okay, let's try this different angle tomorrow." But it's all intentioned as good cop type, yeah.
I remember in my days of FC security engineer at the beginning, I was working on a project for 2 weeks. I didn't find anything. I went to bed 2 a.m. completely exhausted, and 5 minutes after, while I was sleeping, I said, "Okay, let's try this." I went to the computer and I discovered a critical to mint funds unlimited. So
Yeah, so for ours, the team was it sounds like, for visualizing for the audience, the team was, working hard towards that, and they're like, "Hey, we can't unpack it. We can't
I,
unpack something
I
here,"
have one
and
more
yeah.
question. You were talking about essentially playing the role. I mean, you're playing the role of a rogue or bad actor, right? How as you're going through the code and you're trying to break it, how exhaustive is that approach? You're saying you were trying different things, but like how much effort did you guys put into trying to essentially trying to break the system?
So it's a very good question because, but when the creativity and when you are doing the thing you like the most, I mean, I have several engineers in their free time they are doing the same thing just for fun, so it's not exhausting, and for sure we are a team, so we try to collaborate each other. And when you have a project like yours, like okay, I'm not able to discover any kind of breach in this, you share this with another partner, like in your company. You say, okay, do you have any other idea how we can approach this? So we have such a collaborative environment, and we try and this is when these kind of projects come to us, you can say, oh, maybe this is exhausting or something like that. And I think it's totally the opposite. It's like you are pretty excited to do that. You talk to your wife talking about, oh, I'm doing this cryptography project or something. You tell
Yeah,
your
you're
mom,
you're at dinner and they're humoring you.
you tell your kids. My 5 years old kids
Yes, that's
say,
very
oh,
interesting. I'm sure.
Gabby,
cryptography.
I'm relating to this.
So when
No, that
your job is your passion, I mean, it's not exhausting, but I mean, projects like yours put your brain at the maximum effort, and you learn
mhm.
a lot from that. So yeah, when your job is your passion, I mean, everything is much easier.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Michael, I just have one
Okay.
last final wrap up question.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there anything else, or is that good?
I think I mean, we covered quite a bit.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. No,
I don't
I
have
just
any
like
other
to.
further questions.
Yeah, no, Gabby, I really enjoyed all the questions we've gone through. We've kind of covered the gamut in terms of some different areas, and there's just a lot there, and a lot for the audience, regardless of how technical or non-technical they are. There's just a lot for them to gain from this episode. As a closeout, first off, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day with Halborn. Obviously, you have a busy team, developers, and on the security side of. So first off, we appreciate you coming on and joining us and having a fun conversation. And as a wrap up question, where's the best place or two for people to learn more about Halborn's work, and whether they want to maybe look at a future audit themselves for a project, or maybe they just want to learn about the quality of what Halborn does, or who knows, maybe maybe they work in the field and they want to get their name in front of you down the road. Where's a place or two for people to visit beyond halborn.com?
Yeah, so you can go to, as you mentioned, halborn.com, and we have a blog too. And you can follow us on social networks, LinkedIn and Twitter, so X. So, but also, I mean, you have to be one of the. It's curious when you talk to banks, like saying, okay, when you have to know about the news, you go to Forbes or to any other source, but X is one of the main source to understand. You can see the attacks live. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you
fantastic.
get so much, you get news, and then a day later you're like, "Is this wait, there's another hack? Is this new?" Sometimes they're like, "Wait."
Ryan and I have pulled off content that just hit X like an hour or two prior for our episodes, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does seem to be the go-to.
It was yesterday we were talking. I was talking about with a regulator, and they said, in traditional finance is the golden hour. It's like when an attack happen, you have 1 hour to 24 to respond. I said that maybe in crypto the golden hour is just 90 seconds, maybe.
Yeah, you got like a minute, and yeah, it's just that
Exactly.
the pace of stuff is just moving really
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
But no, it really, Michael and I really appreciate it, Gabby, and for everyone in the audience viewing, definitely check out, see what Halborn's work is up to. Within the show notes, we'll have a link to the cryptographic library results. That's a link from Halborn's page, and upcoming. Obviously, the audit is ongoing, so we'll continue to have the remainder of that security review in there as well soon. But everyone watching this, have a great rest of the day, and make sure to keep those digital assets post quantum secure. Thank you.